So chatbots for retail. We've talked about chatbots revolutionizing marketing, and they definitely will. It's going to be a completely different experience. It's not just chatbots, it's chatbots and virtual reality together. So this is when we talked about the convergence of multiple technologies. So when you combine chatbots with virtual reality, what do you get? You get a virtual dealership. It's probably going to change the way we buy everything. And let's talk about large purchases. Let's talk about a house and a car. So let's talk about those. So let's start with the cheaper one. When we go and buy a car, right now what happens? We go to a dealership, we have pushy salespeople that give us the sales pitch, and they try to convince us and they try to pressure us and close before we leave, and they don't want us to see other dealerships, and it's a crazy experience. But more and more people do their research, because this has to do with the sales funnels, and chatbots are going to tie in directly with sales funnels. They're going to help you funnel awareness, consideration set, final three, and then you're going to make the decision. So early on in the funnel, you actually do a lot of research. So think about a chatbot now where you can put on the HoloLens, go into the dealership, and all of a sudden you're in this beautiful space, because the avatar and the physical space is now representative of what the brand wants to project. So if they want to project luxury, you may be in the middle of this fantastic marble palace, whereas if they want to push for speed, you may be doing the car walk around in a NASCAR or Formula One racetrack. So just from there, your senses are in a different place, because they're going to be dream locations. You're going to be literally just doing your research in dream locations, and it's going to be an experience, because you're going to be able to walk around the car, and all of a sudden the sales digital assistant raises it just by moving his or her head, and you see it from below. They turn it around, they spin it, they separate it, so all the parts separate so you can see the inside. They put it back together, and then they run some tests. They're asking you, do you have kids? Do you have that? They're like, oh yeah, we can do the configuration of the back. We can do a 5-seater and we have a 7-seater. Bam. So they changed to the 7-seater. Yeah, we would need a 7-seater because we have 3 kids. And then you would go change colors, change the interior, add features, but you could take it way beyond this. Let's say that safety is one of your primary concerns. You would like to see how it's going to handle in a car crash. So the salesperson just goes, phoom. They put 7 dummies, the family, inside the car, and bam, they run the car into a wall at 30 miles per hour, at 50 miles per hour, at 70 miles per hour. And then you're like, you see how the impact crushes the different crush zones in the car, and you see how it compresses the metal at you, and you decide, this is a safe car. You see the head movement of the dummies inside, etc. Not only that, obviously you're going to be able to take it for a test drive. So the question, this is really going to be interesting. When are we going to get to that experience? Now really more of a sensorial experience, all the senses coming into play, sort of like Ready Player One movie, where you put on a suit and all of a sudden you're feeling different sensations, or you're connecting to your brain and you're stimulating so that you actually feel certain things in your nervous system. But I think that's more of a secondary conversation. But just from the fact that you can, when you're going through the funnel, you can do that for multiple cars. So you can put cars side by side, change the colors, change the interior, do the safety tests, do all these types of things, and then finally decide. So when you're a salesperson, you have to decide what type of salesperson you are now, and what type of salesperson will be effective in the AI future. Because if you're just a pushy salesperson that rattles off a bunch of statistics, then you're going to be replaced. If you're the salesperson that develops a rapport relationship that has warmth, then you have a better shot. In fact, even if salespeople don't disappear, that person could be a real salesperson in there with you. So they could be 2 people in a virtual environment, the buyer and the seller, and it's a real person, but they're in a virtual environment. So if you think about it, that means, and this is something that you have to decide, how many years before you can't go to dealerships? There's no more dealerships out there. You have to decide, is it 5, is it 10, is it 15? So you have to put a stake on the ground, and then from there, start backing into your reality and what are the things that you need to do. If you think that it's such a tectonic shift is coming in the next 5 years, what should you do with all that real estate? Or should you try to acquire more real estate and then sell it? Or they're going to have a period of divesting all of their physical locations? Or do you still need certain type of physical location? When we went to computers, that you could buy them through the internet, but then the Apple Store, I think, surprised a lot of people when they opened the Apple stores. And then that was kind of the model for the Microsoft stores and the Samsung stores and all these stores, where people could go and try out the technology. And so, maybe dealers then will have the same thing, but will they? Or will it just be like an Apple store, just a much smaller space with the salespeople? You put on the HoloLens, there may be 1 or 2 cars there, but that's really just it. Just so you can smell the leather, and kind of see it. But the experience in the virtual world is going to be so much richer. Now, car selling is going to really depend on graphics and animation, and General Motors will need to develop a level of animation that rivals probably game designers. dealerships. So can you imagine that all of a sudden General Motors and Ford and Toyota, all these car manufacturers fighting to steal over the game designers from the companies that make all these electronic games because they need to create these virtual worlds and they need to be able to animate their cars, and it's going to be very interesting. But questions that are very important for the industry, that's why you have to put a stake on the ground and kind of decide when this is going to happen, because it's going to require an additional skill set from the side of the manufacturers that they may not have today. And it's gonna, in terms of graphics and 3D animation and those types of things, creation of virtual worlds. And it may require also the whole dealership business may change. So now, instead of having these huge dealerships filled with cars, you may now have a dealership in every mall, like in an Apple store, and where you put in the HoloLens and you connect to the virtual showroom, and maybe not even that. Then you have to think of how marketing is going to change. Today, advertising in the automotive world is done in 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the manufacturing, Tier 2 are the dealer associations, and Tier 3 are the local dealers. So each one sends a different type of message, but all of them together combined so that you know what car to buy, what type of financing and price you will have, and where you can buy it. As the future develops and the virtual showrooms become all the rage, how is marketing now done at the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 level? If these amazing virtual showrooms are done at the manufacturing level, what's the role of local dealers? Is there a role? And if there's a role, then how can they add value to this AI value chain? Will they have the necessary skill sets? Maybe it is the salesperson coming into the virtual world and that's like their contribution, but things are changing. This will depend on 2 other technologies, 6G and Wi-Fi 7. Right now we're in 5G and Wi-Fi 6, but really the development of these new technologies is going to be crucial. Will there be enough bandwidth in the house to be able to connect 4 or 5 people? Car buying is a family experience for many families. So can you connect 4 or 5 people with all headsets in a virtual simulated world that's unbelievable? It could be a racetrack, it could be a marble palace, you could buy a car on the moon, and can all of them be there and be running simulations and picking it up and opening it up and twisting it around and swinging it and spinning it and accelerating it? Can all of this happen from the house? Or do you need like those industrial strength dedicated lines that will allow that type of bandwidth to occur? And thus you will need Apple Store like shops in different urban centers so that people can go put on the HoloLens and have the experience 4 and 5 at a time. That's the big question. So now that means that the future of dealerships really hangs in the balance of 6G and Wi-Fi 7, and will they be able to handle the volume? And what would that volume be? If we were running an advanced animation, these virtual worlds, how many petabits per second are we talking about here? All of that is going to be very interesting to calculate. Notice how many variables come into play with the future of car buying. And I haven't even mentioned driverless cars. I haven't even touched that subject. It's amazing. Just with AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, chatbots, the industry is going to completely change. And we haven't even touched driverless cars and how that's going to change the industry. Now, driverless or not, you still have to buy them somewhere. So I think we're safe saying that part of the equation may still exist 15 years from now. But that's a whole other, and we're going to deal with that in terms of transportation in the future, but that's a whole other video. So think about, even if you don't believe, if you're a car manufacturer, if you're a car dealership owner, dealer association president, and you think, it's still 25, 30, 40 years old, it's not going to be in my lifetime, fine. But in your lifetime, the way we market, sell, and advertise cars is going to change so much. And that's even before driverless comes into play. You have to get into this AI mindset and start researching your industry, because even if the more advanced features come in later, there's a whole bunch of other things that are going to come into play way before those advanced things that you think are sci-fi that are still 50, 20, 30, 40 years away. There's a bunch of other things that are going to hit in the next 10 years, and they're going to impact your business significantly.